All right, let's bring in our guest this time, current host of the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast and a whole plethora of other appearances on the VSiN Network on Sirius XM Channel 158. Mr. Tim Murray, welcome to the show.
What's up, gentlemen?
Appreciate you joining us, Tim.
Going well, man. Another week of college football, so it's a good time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Tim. So obviously we're a college football show here. We like to dive deep into matchups, analysis, all that good stuff. But really, honestly, what the listener, the viewer, what they want to hear these days is what are the bets to place in the game, right? So before we dive into some games here, some best bets, when you're personally handicapping a game, I want to know how much analysis, like stats wise, like matchup in the trenches do you get versus kind of weighing like trends or trendy spots?
Yeah, so I would consider myself a situational handicapper. I really like to find those spots each and every week, whether it be a look-ahead spot, a letdown spot, a sandwich spot, however you want to classify it. Buy low, sell high. What I do every week is, I go through the board. I kind of circle some games. I think, all right, this one kind of seems interesting, and ultimately dive into those a little bit more extensively. And then you always circle back. For me personally, I look at the board on, Sunday. I've obviously got like games that I've got in mind. Obviously, from a situational standpoint, you look at like Arkansas this week going to Memphis. I've had that circled since the summer with Notre Dame waiting on the wings coming off the Ole Miss game. But then, yeah, I mean, there are times too. I'll give you an example last week. I'm not a big totals guy, but I thought the situation for Notre Dame, Texas A&M was a fascinating one because the year prior they had played a very low scoring game, it was a dead under, and the market really didn't adjust all that much from the closing number a year ago to where it was this past Saturday, and that total was like 49.5, just like a 3-point adjustment from the year prior. And from what you had seen from A&M, from what I knew from knowing Notre Dame as well as I do, I felt like that was an over game, and fortunately that was accurate. So, I'm a little bit different. There are so many different great handicappers out there that love their numbers. Maybe do a little bit of both. I would consider myself more of the situational handicapper, but I'll be honest, man, I consume it all. I love listening to a lot of different points of view, and then and I recommend this to all people who bet. Don't just look. I would love for people just to, hey, Tim said this and I got to bet this. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. Listen to as much as possible, read as much as possible, and then, take that information the way that you ultimately decide to bet it.
Yeah, let's talk about the Illini going to Bloomington Saturday night, 7:30 on NBC. Just kind of give us your rundown of the game, kind of how you're feeling. I mean, obviously, Bielema's got a really good track record as a road underdog. Obviously, and Signetti, I mean, just last year at Indiana, just absolutely killing it in this spot. So it's a really contrast of styles here. Just kind of want to get your rundown on the game.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Kirk Signetti, 11-3 ATS as a favorite. He's a bully, and he wants to run it up on teams that he feels like he's superior to. And now this isn't that classic situation like we saw last week where they put up 73 on Indiana State or what they did to Kennesaw State. I think this is really an intriguing matchup. I have not bet it yet. Look, I have been trying to go against Illinois. 2 weeks ago, I took Duke plus the points. That obviously did not work out. Last week was more of a situational handicap. Also did not work out. So I'm 0-2 going against Brett Bielema this year. I do still think they're a bit overrated if you look at based off of their AP ranking versus what pro bettors and what odds makers think of this Illinois team. That all being said, I think this is going to be a game where Illinois is going to want to kind of grind it out. And I had Wes Reynolds, who a guy that I really respect, at VSiN, Indiana alum, and he was on the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast, and he has under 52.5 in pocket. So he thinks this is going to be more of a grinder. He's curious if some Illinois money is going to come into the market, maybe lowering that spread, lowering that money line. But I kind of like his angle, too, in that particular situation where if you're Brett Bielema, even though they put up 45 against Duke, a lot of that was aided, 5 turnovers going their way. So I could see certainly this being more of a grind out type of game there in Bloomington on Saturday night. But For me right now, based off of the market, it would be dog or pass, but I'm not really interested in grabbing the dog currently.
Yeah, this morning it popped up plus 6.5 on ESPN Bet here in Indiana for Illinois, and I mean, just with Bielema's track record, like
Yeah.
I couldn't say no to that. And I know it's moved all the way from 3.5 to 6.5. But for me, that was like if it comes back down, I may, play a little on Indiana too. So that's kind of where I'm leaning with the game as well. But Lance, wants to talk about some SEC football as usual.
Exactly. Let's head over to the biggest matchup in the SEC this week over in Norman, Oklahoma. Tim, it's the Jackson Arnold Bowl. Jackson Arnold's going against his old squad, the Sooners. Transferred to Auburn. We got a ranked matchup there with Auburn heading on the road to Oklahoma. We've already seen Auburn go on the road once this year and have an impressive win week 1 against Baylor. A lot of Jackson Arnold running the football so far this year. He's got like 35 carries or so on the year. He's their second leading rusher as far as yards and as far as carries is concerned. I'm just curious what your thoughts are in this game. Obviously, Baylor's rush defense, it's not Oklahoma's. So I personally think that Auburn's going to have to utilize that ridiculous wide receiver core that they've got, and they're going to have to put the ball in the air and trust Jackson Arnold more to try to make some plays. My question is, can he against this Oklahoma defense?
Yeah, I think, there's so many interesting things about this upcoming week, right? We just spoke about Indiana. What do we know about Indiana, right? They played Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State. Illinois, I guess it's a little bit more. We know, Duke's quality. It's a good win on the road there. And for Auburn, I think the point you made about what they did at Baylor is a really important one, where they clearly saw, hey, this Baylor defense can be had on the ground. Let's just run it at them all game long. And they did. And, really that cover was never in doubt if you laid the chalk with Baylor in that season opening win. And after that, it's a couple of, easier opponents, kind of a look ahead spot with South Alabama a week ago. And your point is valid, right? They are going to be without R. Mason Thomas in the first half. Oklahoma, that's a big loss. But I think Jackson Arnold, look, we talk so much about going to an environment and, and playing that environment. Jackson Arnold knows the environment. Now, I'm not going to say it's easy. It's going to be a ratchet up atmosphere, but he's going to be familiar with it. I want to see if we can get a 7. I would love a 7 with Auburn. I probably will still take the 6.5 if forced to take it. I think, look, Oklahoma, I didn't bet the Michigan game. My colleague Matt Humans on the podcast liked liked Oklahoma, and he was right. That was a great win. And 24-13 to me, guys, wasn't really telling of what that game ultimately was. I thought Oklahoma dominated that game, and John Mateer has been fantastic so far this year. But Hugh Freeze, historically, you think really the reason why, and Lance, you could probably speak to this, the reason he's the Auburn coach is because he's beaten Alabama, right? So he's been kind of that big game hunter in recent years. So I think Jackson Arnold, as long as he's not too geeked up for it, which you imagine human nature he will be, I think they've got a chance to get some, have some success here against this Oklahoma team. That defense is real, but Cam Coleman and Singleton are 2 legit wide receivers. And I think Jackson Arnold, if he can make some plays, man, this could be a hell of a game. So this probably is my favorite game just to sit back and watch of this upcoming weekend. And I think it definitely, if we get to 7, I might still get there on War Eagle at 6.5. But I think this one is a spot for me where I'd look at the dog.
Yeah, Tim, and this one too, like Hugh Freeze stacking back-to-back top 8 recruiting classes. What he brought in this past year in the transfer portal, like you just mentioned, Singleton, but he also brought in some really good offensive linemen as well. He's recruited well on the defensive side. DJ Durkin's done a great job as the DC there so far. It's most people probably, I'm not saying you don't, but I'm saying I'm going to call them the casuals, probably don't realize that from a talent standpoint, Auburn matches up just fine with Oklahoma in this game. It really just comes down to, can Jackson Arnold make plays with his arm? But I think defensively, Auburn stands up just fine and stacks up just fine against Oklahoma.
Yeah, no, and I mean, look, John Mateer is an X factor. You've seen what he's capable of, previously at Washington State. Then you watch him against Michigan, and he's, lowering the boom. He's the real deal, man, and he's got familiarity with that offense with Ben Arbuckle coming in, his former offensive coordinator. So look, I think this is going to be an incredible chess match. And, look ahead line was 4.5. Auburn plays kind of with their food against South Alabama. Oklahoma in a massive letdown spot takes care of business at Temple. So you saw a little bit of market correction here, but I think this might be a move bit too far. So, like I said, I think I'll probably be sitting there with an Auburn ticket come Saturday.
Let's talk America's conference here, the Big 12. We got a big one out in Salt Lake City, 10 a.m. local kick out there on Big Noon Kickoff. Texas Tech taking on Utah. Kyle Whittingham, obviously down year last year, really held in limbo the past 2 years just with the quarterback position. No longer this year with Devin Dampier there. They took care of business against UCLA. We kind of know what kind of win that was now looking at UCLA. But Whittingham, I mean, all he does is win. All he's done is win in Salt Lake City. Now you got the upstart, Texas Tech. Every time we look on our TV, you got Cody Campbell telling us, we need to save college sports, all this good stuff. Texas Tech coming in there. It's a 3-point spread, which is what you're going to get a lot in the Big 12 this year with how evenly matched a lot of those teams are. Personally, I mean, we love Whittingham on this podcast, and we love Texas Tech. Our guy Josh Abbott, big Texas Tech fan. It's just hard to go against Whittingham in a spot like this at Rice Eccles, right?
Yeah, I hate the fact that it's a day game at 10 a.m., but
Yeah.
look, he'll have his team ready. Texas Tech's another one of those teams where we're kind of waiting to see who they really are, and maybe we find out, on Saturday afternoon that they're the real deal. Look, Utah was a team, and you could have taken a shot in the dark on 8 different teams in the Big 12 preseason. Utah was the team that I hitched my wagon to. I was really excited to see Devin Dampier in this offense as he comes in with his offensive coordinator as well from New Mexico. So you had that cohesion. There was a lot made about Oklahoma, understandably so. But for me, I gravitated towards Utah and what Devin Dampier brought to the table from an athletic standpoint and what he did at New Mexico. He's looked more impressive as a passer so far. I know they were held in check in the first half last week against Wyoming. I thought that was a pretty tricky spot to go to Laradice and, be playing in that spot with Texas Tech waiting there. So, yeah, I think Utah, for me, I'm going to probably sit it out just because of my position on a future at 6-1. But, yeah, when you've got the best offensive line in the conference, you've got a very stingy defense. I think Utah should take care of business here. And, curious to see what the market ultimately does here in this particular game. As you look at, right now, Utah, there was a 2.5 out there, still is at FanDuel. Money line around minus 144 at FanDuel. That's going to be the best price if you like Utah, a little bit pricier everywhere else. But yeah, I think for me, Texas Tech, I get it. You've got all the money in the world. You went out and you got all these big time transfer portal pieces. I gotta see it, and maybe I'll see it on Saturday. But I'm gonna trust in Kyle Whittingham, as you guys alluded to, at home in this spot with the superior offensive line, and in my opinion, the superior quarterback.
Yeah, Tim, I want to talk about a game now that preseason wise, this was one that intrigued me so much just because, just as a fan of the sport as a whole, I like Matt Rule. And we all know the stuff about year 3 Matt Rule, what he did at Temple, what he did at Baylor. And this was really the first big spot on the schedule for Nebraska to try to really show, is the year 3 Matt Rule deal? Is Nebraska going to take that next step forward by bringing in Michigan to Lincoln this weekend? And I'm just curious what your thoughts are in this game. With obviously, we've seen Bryce Underwood already as a true freshman. He's gone on the road against a really good Oklahoma defense. Things did not go well in that game. I was, after that game, just constantly talking about, I cannot believe that Michigan is not utilizing him more in the QB run game. Last week, we saw him run the ball more. Granted, only a few of those were actually like QB designed runs. They were more him improvising and running, but at least he showed that now that we've seen that when he did that last week against the good old Chippewas. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are in this Michigan-Nebraska game. Can Nebraska step up and get that big signature win under Matt Rule for the Huskers?
Yeah, this would be a big one, right? I mean, they kind of, I don't want to say they need this one, but if they're to get where many people believe, and I took a preseason position on over 7.5 wins for Nebraska, not banking on this game, but saying, hey, man, if this comes home, we're feeling pretty good and we're in a good situation here. with Nebraska. So, you've seen the market come up from 1.5 to 2.5 on this particular game. Look, Nebraska, I thought was kind of unimpressive in the season opener. I thought they were a bit fortunate not only to get the cover, but to get the win in that spot there against Cincinnati. But, Michigan, as you mentioned, look, New Mexico game, do with it what you will. Obviously, New Mexico impressed last week against UCLA. They go down to Oklahoma. I thought I would see a little bit more from Michigan down in Oklahoma, to be honest. I came away from that game. They had the one explosive play where they get the 75-yard touchdown run right at the start of the second half, and they had the block punt, but that didn't really it led to a field goal. And look, Oklahoma's defense might be one of the best in the country, but I love home dogs. We'll see where this number ultimately goes, but Dylan Raiola, I think this is a big spot for him. I thought last year, late in the season, when the pressure was kind of off, Holgerson comes in. I thought he played much better. Big spot against Cincinnati. I was kind of underwhelmed by the performance, but they've got some guys that they went out and they got. Dane Key, the big addition from Kentucky. So I think there's a big spot here for Nebraska to say, hey, we're here in this conference and we've got a chance maybe to make it to the playoff. Now, a long way to go before that, but this is a massive game for Nebraska. No Sharon Moore. I don't know what that does for anyone's handicap, but he won't be there for this game. It'll be Biff Poggi stepping in as he was there last week. But yeah, I think for me, Nebraska win total. I don't know how you guys are. Some of these matchups, if it's a close one, if I don't have a strong feel one way or the other, I just kind of lean on where I was from a preseason position.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be a great one for the win total. Wasn't one that I said I needed, but it would be great if we could ultimately get there on this side. So hopefully Nebraska shows us what they're capable of because this is a big spot there in Lincoln against a freshman quarterback, hostile environment. This would be a big, big win for Matt Rule in year 3.
Yeah, Tim, we go conference by conference in preseason with season win totals. And one of my favorite season win total bets that I gave out here on our podcast of the year was Nebraska over 7.5. So yeah, I'm with you on that. Tim, we'll start us off here. We want to get your take on maybe some best bets that you're targeting this weekend for games we haven't talked about yet. So maybe we can you can help make our listeners a little walking around money for this weekend. I'll start us off here because you talked about spots. And one of the favorite spots on the board that Tyler and I both we matched up with on a bet that we gave out earlier this week on the pod. Tyler, I believe you got him at 10.5. I got him at 11. But we're both riding with Lance Leipold and the Kansas Jayhawks and Rock Chalk Jayhawk this week. West Virginia coming off that huge win in the backyard brawl. Now they're going on the road to Lawrence. Kansas coming off a bye. I mean, I know it's double digits, but we're going to ride with Kansas and the Jayhawks this week at home. Minus 11 for me, minus 10.5 for Tyler. Curious what your thoughts are on that, and then give us a good best bet that you're targeting.
Yeah, that's a great spot. Rich Rodriguez emotional after the win in the backyard brawl, and you do wonder how much effort and just everything they put into that game, knowing that they're down their top running back, they're down one of their top wide receivers. You saw the market get up as high as 14 today on this game. It's been pushed back down to 13. I'm with you guys. I laid a little 13. I'm not a big fan of laying chalk, but I thought this was a great spot. Kansas coming off a bye. West Virginia, just a hard-fought game. You're down 10. You get that win in overtime. You're at home. Like I said, Rich Rodriguez, pretty emotional after the game. A couple of target spots that I've targeted, from a situational standpoint. I pointed this one out in the summer. We'll see if it comes to fruition because I've actually been more impressed by our Arkansas than I expected. I think Taylon Green and Bobby Petrino seem to be on the same page. They put up a ton of points last week, albeit in a losing effort to Ole Miss. Memphis, we don't really know yet what this Memphis Tigers team is, but they get this game at home. They're catching 7.5. Haven't really seen much in the market. There are some 7s out there, so maybe a little bit at that hook price. I took 7.5. I think situationally, this is a pretty good one to back Memphis. Notre Dame comes to Fayetteville next week. And from the folks that I've talked to, they've been talking about that game for quite some time, even though Notre Dame is 0-2. So I think that's a tricky spot there for Arkansas to go on the road off the Ole Miss game. Next week, they host the Irish, kind of a sandwich spot there. And then, one game that the best of the number is gone, but I think still I'd play it is East Carolina. I really like this spot for the Pirates. They're getting BYU. Granted, BYU's coming off a bye, but East Carolina at home, you've seen year after year in this role as the underdog. You saw it earlier this year against NC State. They love to punch up. And BYU, the theme has been a lot this year is how do these quarterbacks fare in their first true road game, right? You look at Ty Simpson and how that went. Sorry to bring up bad memories. You look at CJ Carr, even though he played okay against Miami, still was a loss. I think Bear Bachmeier really hasn't been tested yet there with BYU. And this is another one of those teams. We talked about it previously. Like, what do we know about BYU? They played Portland State. They played Stanford. They are coming off a bye. So I think this is going to be a pretty tricky environment, weird travel spot, right? Provo to Greenville, North Carolina. So I know it's 6.5. I hate giving out bad numbers, but I think East Carolina for me in that spot against BYU is a pretty good look.
Well, that was my next best bet I was going to give you was East Carolina plus 6.5. So I'm with you, Tim. That's why I was kind of
Yeah, we
smiling there when
do
you
we
said
do
that.
we do upset alerts here on our show, and East Carolina was Lance's upset alert. Memphis is my upset alert. We dabble a little bit, sprinkle a little bit on the money line there in those situations to see if we can't go 4 for 4. Sticking in the state of Tennessee, I got to do a hold your nose spot here and take Tennessee minus 39.5 against UAB. I know I sound like a degenerate there taking Tennessee minus 39.5, but they're 18-4 against the spread in non-conference games since Josh Heupel took over. So it's just kind of a get right spot, coming off that Georgia loss. Yeah, with you on Memphis. I like Syracuse. I'm going to keep fading Clemson there. So Syracuse plus 17.5 looks good. Finish us out here, Tim. You got anything else for us before we get you out of here?
Yeah, the Syracuse game, I'm not necessarily lockstep with you. I hear you on
Mhm.
Clemson. I do wonder if this is the Tyler from Spartanburg rallying cry with his whole spiel that he gave everyone yesterday about, yeah, you don't like
Oh,
me,
yeah.
I'll leave. So
Yeah.
we'll see. I also am down on Syracuse this year. I don't think they're very good, but I'm not going to lay 17 with Clemson. I'll give you a couple real quickly that I have on the radar here, and we'll just kind of rifle through them. They burned me last week, but I do wonder at some point, is this a buy low on Florida plus 7.5? DJ Lagway was just horrendous last week with 5 interceptions, but I do wonder, rivalry game. Is this team going to quit on Sunbelt Billy? So that could be a hold your nose spot where you're like, oh God, I don't know how this is going to play out.
Yeah.
Situationally, I'll go back to the well on this. I'm going to take Northern Illinois this week plus 21.5 against Mississippi State. Love the Cowbells 2 weeks ago against Arizona State. Next week, the Cowbells will be rocking when Tennessee comes to town. I think this is just a little bit of a peek ahead. Look ahead down the road. Do you just get out of there? Does NIU kind of muck this thing up? They went to Maryland earlier this year on a Friday night. I think they were catching like 14, lost by 11. Thomas Hammock, of course, last year took NIU into South Bend and we got the victory. So I'm going to hold my nose and take the boys from DeKalb plus anything north of 3 touchdowns. And then lastly, I think from a situational angle, guys, you have to take Temple this week. I took them last week. It was a disaster against Oklahoma, but I just am very curious to see how Georgia Tech, bounces back after their generational win. What an amazing performance by Haynes King, over 100 yards rushing. I thought the execution at the end of the game on the fire drill for the field goal was just perfect. But Brent Key has been an underdog machine, but as a favorite, it's kind of mixed results. 6-8-1 ATS this year as a favorite. He is 2-0 this year. Georgia Tech is as a favorite, but once again, situational spots. I love them. I'm going to be on Temple, and we'll see if the Owls can flap some wings down there in Atlanta as opposed to Philly, because last week was an absolute dead wrong side for them against Oklahoma.
Lance, you got anything else?
No, that's it, man.
Sam, we can't thank you enough for hopping on real quick with us. Real quick, let the people know where they can find you and all your shows on VSiN.
Yeah, you can check out the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're up on YouTube now, all 3 of our episodes. So 3 episodes every week. With a Thursday episode is our most popular. We run through all the games, all our best bets. And then every Saturday, I know College Game Day and Big Noon Kickoff are going on, but I'll be hosting the College Football Tailgate Show on VSiN starting at 9 a.m. Eastern. So check that out every Saturday. Sirius XM channel 158, YouTube TV. If you get Red Zone, you get VSiN. So keep that in mind. If you have the sports package, we're part of the sports package there on YouTube TV.
Definitely. Yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in. Once again, college football coming up on Saturday, week 4, not a sleepy Saturday. I promise it's going to be a good Saturday like every Saturday is. So yeah, tune in, Apple, Spotify, YouTube for us, Instagram, TikTok, X, all that stuff. Follow along, subscribe, follow. We appreciate it. For Tim Murray and Lance Barton, I'm Tyler Noe. Take care. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next time.